We got that
Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.
Find a plan that goes with your flow. Get unlimited local talk, text, and data at the most affordable rate with Unlimited Flow Postpaid, only at Docomo Pacific.
Wendy's Guam is back. Wendy's Guam's new Thin Mints Frosty is here. It's swirled with Wendy's chocolate mint sauce inspired by the flavor of Girl Scouts Thin Mints. This is no dream, people. Be sure to get your hands on that minty, chocolatey, frosty goodness while you can. The new Thin Mints Frosty won't be around forever. Head on over today at Wendy's. Good, done right. Cold Stone Guam's Very Berry Non-Dairy is very berry delicious. This creation is deliciously made with silk chocolate almond milk, strawberries, blueberries, and raspberries. Vegans and non-vegans alike will fall for this plant-based, vegan, dairy-free, and lactose-free frozen dessert made with silk chocolate almond milk. Cold Stone Creamery, the ultimate ice cream experience.
Kandit News is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good evening, my dear friends. It is 8:12 p.m. and mark this day, March 5, 2025. It's Ash Wednesday because as the Republican Party of Guam was releasing a statement in support of President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress where tariffs were acclaimed, where tariffs were applauded by the Republican establishment. Within minutes of the Republican Party of Guam releasing that statement, the Chinese embassy in the United States released this statement. If war is what the U.S. wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end. End quote. You know, I have just a little brief history about me and about and how I know things about tariffs and China and things that happened during World War II and all. So when I was in college, I double majored in the most useless majors that you could ever imagine, English and history. I actually finished all of my major coursework, and I would have graduated if I had only taken that stupid UOG class, the one about like how to be a UOG. I never took that stupid class. And then there was, I think, as a psychology or I didn't finish my general education requirements, but as part of my history major, one of the major things that we studied was Manchuria and China from the 19th century going into the era of communism. And of course, when you study things like that, you study what happened with isolationism following World War I and how that led to economic conditions that spurred the Great Depression, which spurred further nationalism and isolationism, which led to the rise of Hitler and Tojo, or whatever his name is over in Japan, which led to World War II, which led to the murder of thousands of Chamorros in Guam. And the reason I tell you that is because when I say that this is the closest that China has ever come to threatening war in the United States, it is because of an understanding of this very brief, when you consider it, hasn't even been 150 years since the last time China was not isolated, since the last time that China was aggressive. And while China has been expansionist in its agenda, that expansion has been relegated to only this region. And yeah, that has meant many things for Guam and the CNMI, of course, for our allies in the region, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, most especially, Australia, New Zealand. The prospect of all-out war with China hasn't really been up there. The Chinese have been busy expanding their soft power throughout the world, something that the United States has been very good at since the Marshall Plan at the end of World War II, the use of American power to project stability, leadership, and moral leadership throughout the world by doing things like rebuilding Europe, like going into Africa with life-saving medications, therapies, treatments, participating in conflicts by siding with democratically elected governments or resistances that promote freedom. Soft power, like building roads in Palau, providing compact impact monies to the Federated States of Micronesia. The Chinese government over the past, ever since Xi Jinping came to power as the premier of China, has exercised this soft power in many instances, even more than the United States has. And so as the Trump administration withdraws United States soft power from across the globe, the Chinese have come in to fill that vacuum. They're coming in to fill that vacuum. They're the world to look into the Chinese because they've got the money, they've got the resources and all that. And so a military war with the world's largest army, while it has been something that America has prepared for, and even Admiral Papero, who is the commander of Indo-Pacific Command, has expressed caution, worry even about the United States' readiness to go to an all-out war with China. What has worked over the past several years has really been almost like a Cold War between the two countries, where the exhibition of soft power has been more important, but backed up by military spending and by defense and offensive measures. And, you get into the whole cyber security, AI, and all these new ways of engaging in warfare and whatever. But it has been almost 150 years since the Chinese have mentioned any aggression against the West, and this is the first time in our history that the Chinese have come this close to a threat of war, and it's about the tariffs. So what happened today, Guam time, was the Trump administration's tariffs went into effect, 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada, and an additional 20% on Chinese imports. All three countries have announced retaliatory measures. China announced on X that almost threat of war. On top of that, backing up its threat with an announced 7.2% increase in military spending by the CCP into their military for both defense and offense. I, as a citizen of this country and as someone who lives in Guam, I'm really hoping for some kind of a reset here. Because guess who's closest to China? It's us in the Marianas. It's Guam and the CNMI. If I can remember correctly, there was even a missile named after Guam by the CCP. But these tariffs, they went into effect today. They are the most sweeping tariffs since a tariff act by the United States, Republicans, again, this was a Republican administration and a Republican Congress back in 1930. In 1930, the U.S. Congress passed what's called the Smoot-Hawley Tariffs Act of 1930. It imposed a 20% tariff on imports, just like the 20% tariffs that the United States just today implemented or levied against China. 25% on Mexico, 25% on Canada. And these tariffs that in 1930 Congress passed was supposed to address the Great Depression. The Great Depression started on October 24, 1929, when the U.S. stock market crashed for a number of factors. A whole bunch of things that came out of America and the world's imperialistic age back in the late 1800s, moving into World War I. How the United States and the Allied powers dealt punishingly, how they punished those who were vanquished in Europe and also Japan after World War I, led to economic conditions throughout the world that, much like today, the economic conditions we face today as a result of the pandemic and other matters, other issues, led to the revival of ancient prejudices. And those ancient prejudices were, it was like the populace, they came, they descended, they took those ancient prejudices, they displayed full display in speech after speech. And it's not just Trump, it's other conservatives, right-wingers, fascists throughout the world who have descended on this opportunity to use and to consolidate these ancient prejudices to blame groups of people for the economic conditions, propel nationalism, and begin to isolate their countries, including the United States. And so, when the stock market crashed in 1929, to address the Great Depression, the Republicans thought, we're going to be protectionists. We're going to protect American manufacturing and production. We are going to bring jobs back into America. We are going to force the country to produce inside the United States. And even though the economists at the time said, don't do that, that's not how the world works, that's not what's going to happen, much like economists in the United States since last year have been warning the American public, don't do this, don't become nationalistic, don't become isolationist, do not implement tariffs, because we've seen this play out before. This is not something new. It may be something new in our lifetimes because we weren't alive in 1929 and 1930, but we sure as heck learned about it starting in 4th grade social studies for anyone who was paying attention and not jerking off in class. From the 4th grade to the 12th grade, except for that one grade level where the social studies requirement was Guam history. And even at that, we talked about World War II. So every single year from the time you were 9 years old to the time you were 17, even if you didn't go to college, all of this information has existed, and we learned about what happens when a country as powerful as the United States turns inward, becomes isolationist rather than internationalist, propels nationalism and ultranationalism, and then engages in a trade war. So 1929, we plunge into the Great Depression. We're embroiled in it. The Republicans at the time, they're like, we got to do something about this. We got to become nationalistic. We got to take care of ourselves. We got to bring jobs back. We have to implement tariffs. And so they implement the 20% Smoot-Hawley Tariffs Act of 1930. And by every reputable, credible account, it plunged us into greater depression. Food prices and the prices of everything else skyrocketed to the point where only the wealthy could afford these things. The retaliatory tariffs from the rest of the world made everything just that much more expensive. And as that was going on, as we were embroiled in this, a guy named Adolf Hitler, hardly educated, but could he make good speeches that would rile up a crowd for 6 straight hours, 3 hours at a time, 4 hours at a time, 6 hours at a time, about the threat from within the German Republic, which was a democracy. It was a full democracy. There were enclaves of gays, gypsies, Jewish people, immigrants who were living and thriving in Germany as free people. And then Adolf Hitler comes around and he says, you know what? The reason that things suck so much for us white people of Germany is because of all these people who have conspired against the German Republic. It's because of the liberal media. It's because of the progressives. It's because of the communists. It's because they don't want you to see what the Jews were doing, how the gypsies were retarding the state, how the gays were ruining families and ruining Germany. We need to make Germany great again. I'm not making this up. This is history. We need to make Germany great again. We need to return to that great German age, Adolf Hitler said. And so in 1933, he was elected Chancellor of Germany, democratically elected, based on his promises. 4 weeks into his election, the German Reichstag burned down. Several scholars believe that it was set by the Nazi Party itself. And I don't know if that has ever been resolved in history. But the Reichstag burned down. Hitler immediately blamed the communist members of parliament. The Reichstag is the German parliament building. Immediately blamed the communist members of parliament, had them arrested. It affected the March elections in that year. And on March 24, I think it is. Let me look at my notes. On March 23, 1933. Just a few days later, a few days after the Reichstag burned down. And after Hitler convinced Parliament and the German people that there was a credible inner threat to the German Republic and German security, the German Parliament passed the Enabling Act of 1933. The Enabling Act granted Adolf Hitler dictatorial powers. And he took those dictatorial powers and in his already announced agenda of aggression that not just the German people, but the rest of Europe and the United States knew about because they heard him on the radio. It wasn't something that was hidden from everyone. Now he had a full license through the Enabling Act to implement his policies of aggression. So then he invades Poland and the Sudetenland and Czechoslovakia, and then he goes into France, and the rest of it's history. And on the other side of the world, there was Japan, and Japan invaded Manchuria and then China, and then they came here. And they killed our ancestors. It's a little more complicated than just saying that it started with tariffs, but a big part of this history that we learned had to do with massive tariffs. It had to do with isolationism. It had to do with nationalism. It had to do with the attitude that is pervading so many of the conversations that are happening in Guam, in the Sinai, and throughout the country. And that is this whole idea of America first, as though we haven't put our country first for the entirety of its existence. But the real moniker of this campaign is the same one that led to World War II and the murder of 35 million people. And that is isolationism, nationalism. That's precisely what's going on. And this has led to the closest China has ever gotten to a threat of all-out war with our country. A threat that they've never made before. Coming from a country that over the course of its history, over the course of its modern history, from the late 1800s, even through the communist era, up until Xi Jinping, was isolationist on its own because it could survive on its own with the resources that they have at their disposal and the human resources that they have, and has been coming out of its shell more and more, has expressed its expansionist policies in this region at least, has talked about ensuring Taiwan, ensuring that there is no question about China's sovereignty over Taiwan and making that a thing in 2027, which is just around the corner. And now it appears that policies implemented over the past month, mirroring policies implemented in the lead up to World War II, has now provoked the only other superpower in the world to all but threaten war with our country. These are sad times. Pray for our people. Pray for the American Republic. Pray that things change. And, this isn't even about being a Republican or a Democrat, for Trump or against Trump. This is just about the survival of our country and what being an American is all about. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. You all have a wonderful evening. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
We got that dynamite. We got that dynamite.
Find the perfect ride for you today with the New Year New Ride sales event at Guam Auto Spot. Get behind the wheel of the 2024 Outlander Sport, starting at just $22,995 or only $156 per paycheck. Visit GuamAutospot.com or call 671-478-AUTO.